I think the intellectual revolution that's going on now to restore liberty in this country is well on its way, and there's no way they're going to stop the momentum that we have started.
I often wonder why someone like me would be involved in politics. The answer is really simple.
Today, welcome back to our show. Today we have Eric Brakey from Maine on. Hello, Eric.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for coming on. Eric is one of the delegates that was unseated by the RNC down in Tampa, and he was also the state director for Ron Paul's campaign in Maine. And he's also the president of the Defense of Liberty PAC in Maine there. So I thought it would be good to have Eric on. We've been trying to have him on for a couple weeks, but there's been scheduling conflicts on both sides. So here we go. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you both again.
You look a little bit better since the last time we saw you.
Yeah.
I know.
Got over that cold I had.
Good, yeah. That was that last night was kind of exhausting for all of us. Yeah. Okay, what I'm going to start with is we'll start with just a little bit of background info for everyone. When did you get actively involved in the liberty movement and politics, or what brought you to it? That's what we'll start with.
It's interesting hearing everyone's different stories. I know a lot of people who came from the left, some came from the right, some came from complete apathy. I came from the right. I grew up in a family where Rush Limbaugh was on every day, and I grew up watching Fox News and Bill O'Reilly until I kind of had a couple of people in my life who started pushing me to look at things a little differently and to, I found with most people when they kind of realized that they were wrong and that there was something to this Ron Paul liberty thing, they've had it coming from them from at least 3 different directions at the same time. For me, it was my brother Matt, who was a big Ron Paul supporter, who was hammering me about it, and I thought he was stupid. And then it was also he was always posting Jack Hunter videos on his Facebook page, and I would watch a couple of them, and it's like, all right, well, he's getting some of these things right on some of the domestic policy. The foreign policy stuff is still pretty crazy. And then actually, believe it or not, a big gateway drug for me to full libertarianism was Glenn Beck. And I know that Glenn Beck is a very controversial figure, and a lot of people, he's wrong on many things, and he's done a lot of harm to the movement, but he's also done some good things, and I know a lot of people who he was their gateway drug to kind of questioning the neoconservative orthodox and making the full leap to libertarianism. And so just because someone has done certainly things that are harmful doesn't mean that we should ignore the things that they've done that have been beneficial. And then that was actually right after the Tea Party wave, and read some of Ron Paul's books, and I started getting involved, getting active in New York City, which is where I was working as an actor at the time. And then that led to me getting being recruited to take a job with the Ron Paul campaign, and I had a couple of choices of different states to go to. I had a lot of family in Maine, so I chose to come to Maine, and then that's how the wheels got turning.
Interesting. Cool. How long? When was it that you like? How long has it been?
It's a real. It's hard to say because everything's a real process, but I think kind of the big moment for me was at some point in 2010. I remember a particular episode of Glenn Beck I was watching. He did like a full week on tackling the spending and putting some of the sacred cows on the table and saying, all right, well, we need to start questioning, are these things worth the money that we're spending? And he did like a day on education and the Department of Education and kind of that. But then there was one particular day, and I think it was the Thursday of the week, he said, all right, well, we need to look at defense spending, and we need to look at foreign aid, and we need to start asking ourselves, should we have troops in Germany half a century later? Should we be in Japan half a century later? And that was kind of, I started hearing the things that I had heard Ron Paul saying, and I thought they were crazy. Hearing the things I thought Jack Hunter was saying, I thought they were crazy. But suddenly they were coming from a voice that I trusted, who had credibility to me at the time. Doesn't necessarily have all that credibility to me right now, but at the time had credibility with me, and that gave me the permission to start really kind of questioning some of the things that I didn't allow myself to question. And that was really kind of a big transformational moment for me. So that was in 2010, about 2-3 years ago.
Cool. Well, that's kind of a different way to wake up to it through someone like Glenn Beck.
Different paths, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When was it just this election cycle that you decided to get more involved in when you were able to take a job for the campaign, or was it a little bit before then too?
Well, I've always been politically involved. I remember being in second grade and in our little second grade straw poll voting for Bob Dole, and no idea why other than the fact that my parents were supporting Bob Dole. But they've even told me since then, yeah, we didn't support Bob Dole that much. I don't know why you had the idea. I think he was kind of the Mitt Romney of his time. So, but yeah. I wasn't really an activist. I was certainly, I watched Fox News and I considered myself politically informed and politically involved because of that, But I wasn't really an activist until this go around, 4 years ago. Unfortunately I got suckered into the whole McCain-Palin phenomenon, and, because that's what, the Fox News told me I should be doing. That was what it meant to be a conservative. But I didn't really do much. I think I made some phone calls, and that was the extent of it. But this go around, because I was so motivated, I really had my eyes open, and I thought that we could win, and I still believe to this day that we could have won if one or two different things had gone a little differently. The time was right, and so I kind of put everything I had into it. Started volunteering with an organization in New York City called the NYC Liberty HQ. I just started off coming to some debate watching parties and helping out with stuff here and there. That actually, one of the things that was interesting about my time at the NYC Liberty HQ, everyone keeps handing out these tax-free tip cards. I'm sure everyone's seen the tax-free tip cards. At my time at NYC Liberty HQ, I created and designed the first tax-free tip card. It was a grassroots thing. We were in New York City. We had a lot of people who were in the service industry, and we wanted to have an excuse to, we wanted to be able to go out to bars and talk to people about Ron Paul. And we also knew that it was a good way to get, press coverage, because New York City are the media capital of the world, and we actually did get some press for it. So I created working with some other folks, I designed and created the first tax-free tip card. It was just this little, like a fourth of a sheet of green cardboard paper with a little picture of a waiter on it. It says, don't let the government tax your tips. And I think I stole some of the language directly off of Daily Paul. But we started handing that out, and then it became more and more developed, and eventually the campaign picked it up, and then it kind of went everywhere. So that was kind of a fun thing. But I started off at the NYC Liberty HQ just as a volunteer. I just kept coming back. They kept asking me to come back, and eventually I ended up being the managing director of the organization, just because I kept showing up and they needed someone to do it. So it was kind of just handling the day-to-day operations there. But that organization ended up being, it was a grassroots organization, and ended up being a bit of a farm for staff members in the campaign. They kept grabbing a lot of the really good people. And I know James Barcia, who ended up being the deputy press secretary, he was stolen from that organization there. And then Katie Redmond, who went on to Washington State to help out there, and then myself. So and then Nick Spanos led that. And he ended up being kind of the whole architect of the Phone from Home program, and a lot of great stuff came out of that organization in New York.
Very interesting. Since we kind of just got involved in January of this year, like we always voted and all that kind of stuff, but like jumped in with both feet in January of this year, sort of thing, like an activist. Some of the background stuff is like,
interesting.
Yeah, learning it like all like really fast.
Because we knew about Ron Paul in 2008, but we were in the middle of a move and we're not able to do anything really. And so we really just got involved, January.
Yeah, we were so new. When I signed up to be a delegate, I didn't know what it meant to be a delegate. I had no idea what I was going to do.
Yeah, I think most people, you don't know exactly what you're getting into until you start going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, definitely. I had no idea I would be facing our state chair in the front of the RNC Committee on Contests 6 months later.
Yeah, but now in Maine, I was working in Maine. I started off as just field staff after the caucuses, where we were very successful. I think we came closer in Maine than in any other state to a first place finish in our presidential preference poll. But then we ended up missing it by about 100 votes, and there was a lot of shenanigans and sloppiness that went on with that presidential preference poll by the state GOP, where it's that close, it's really hard to determine who actually won that. There are a lot of things that aren't verifiable in terms of the results, and it was really kind of a tie for first place when you look at the numbers. But then after that, I went on and I became the state director. I was the only remaining staff person in the state, and I got all of our delegates ready for the state convention, which really ended up being a huge success, because the first thing I did was I got the grassroots involved. I brought a lot of grassroots leaders on board to help me kind of plan and work through everything. So I was kind of there as the campaign leader for the state, but whereas I think in other states there were a lot of conflicts and arguments between the campaign and the grassroots, in Maine we didn't really have that. In Maine, the grassroots and the campaign were really well integrated. It really kind of worked together as a well-oiled machine, and I think it's a part of that was because we are a small state population-wise. So in our preparations for the convention, I was able to go and meet everyone. I was able to go to all 16 counties and do convention trainings, and so everyone knew me, everyone knew my face, and everyone trusted me. And we did weekly conference calls. We did things in a very open and transparent way, so that everyone who wanted to be involved had an opportunity to be involved, and that really paid off. at the state convention, we were incredibly well organized. We won the convention chair by a slim margin of 4 votes. And the Romney campaign was really trying to bank on our disorganization and our dysfunctionalness. They one of the things they did was they put out a fake slate of people we actually were going to nominate later to be alternates. And on this fake slate, they said, "This is the grassroots liberty slate. Don't believe those official campaign people. They just want to screw you over. This is all grassroots." And so they were banking on, I think, a little bit of what happened in some other states. The schism between the grassroots and the campaign just wasn't the case in Maine. So and with that slim margin that we had, it was the organization that we had and the communication and the trust that we had that really paid off.
That's what I was going to ask, and I'm glad you mentioned it there, how you guys were able to work together so well, because I think it's obvious how well the campaign working with the grassroots worked in Maine. I mean, you guys did really well, but like you said, there are 100 votes in the caucus, the presidential preference poll, and if we had something like that in Oklahoma, which is what we asked for, I think we would have had a completely different outcome. But I mean, it was a nightmare here, so I'm not going to get into it right now. But so you can continue on with the
main story.
The main story. But I would like to hear that you actually worked with us, the grassroots,
Yeah, well, maybe it was just because I was kind of young, and so I wanted a lot of feedback. I got here, and when we first got here, the first person, we were like, okay, what do we do? How do we get started? People told us, you got to go talk to Brent Tweed. Brent Tweed had kind of been the de facto grassroots coordinator for the state since the '08 campaign. He'd been the one who kind of kept the grassroots network together, who'd been doing meetups, and we went and spoke to him, and he'd already built this network, and we kind of adopted that network. We were working with Brent Tweed, and then we kind of just continued expanding and building upon that network. And Brent Tweed ended up being our convention chair, our delegation chair. But that's kind of symbolic of how the grassroots and the campaign really integrated together. It was the campaign, it was the grassroots. Where does one end? Where does one begin? It's hard to tell sometimes. That's the way it should be. I still, maybe someone would contest me on this, but I still consider myself grassroots. That's where I started. That's how I became a member of the a staff member of the campaign, is because I was very active in the grassroots, and they just snatched me from that. But anyway, so that was kind of the lead up to the state convention. And stop me if you ever have any questions about anything. So that was the lead up to the state convention. After that, we had we won everything at the state convention pretty much. I think our national committee man Mark Willis said it best. He said, we went and we pretty much took everything that wasn't nailed down, which was we got the hey, I'm doing a interview. All right.
Need your cookies.
Okay. Sorry, 1 second.
That's all right. I know how it is. There's about, behind us, there's 13 people, running around. Not right this very second. But.
Well, anyway, that was Sean Bowen, who was actually campaigning in New Hampshire. So, anyway, so where was I? So yeah, we won everything at the state convention. We got the delegates, we got the alternates, we got the presidential electors, we got the national committee man, national committee woman, and also very importantly, we got the state committee. We got about 75% of the state committee positions that were up for election at the state convention, and that 75% translates into roughly 50% of the state committee as a whole, because there are other positions that are not elected at the state convention. So that was really crucial. I'll talk about what happened going into the national convention, but the most important thing, as I see it, that we got out of that, as we were preparing people for the state convention, I told people, we have two goals at this convention. We have a short-term goal and a long-term goal. The short-term goal is to get Ron Paul to become president, and that we do that by we get the delegates. That's what we need. So that's the short-term goal. But our long-term goal, which is arguably more important, was to get the state committee, because that's how you continue to make change in the long term. Whatever happened in this presidential election, if you have the state committee, you can continue to make institutional change going forward for the next election, the elections after that, everything going forward. And we got that. I think some of the local papers called it one of the most astonishing coups in Maine politics in recent history. We went from having like 2 or 3 people on the state committee to having 40. So it was huge, and it's created some tensions in the party, but we're kind of working through it now, and we're getting to a place that's really healthy. One of the things that, just to kind of jump to something that happened today, actually, and this is a huge part of us having the state committee, is about a month ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, maybe a month and a half ago, before the national convention and everything, some of us on the state committee got together and we wanted to look at Audit the Fed. What can we do to help support Audit the Fed? Because we have 2 Republican senators and neither of them had co-sponsored Audit the Fed. That's Senator Susan Collins and Senator Olympia Snowe. So I drafted a letter and started inviting our senators to co-sponsor Audit the Fed. I just started talking to people on the state committee, talking to people who are Ron Paul supporters, Liberty people, and also people who are establishment people, people who wouldn't normally be on our side with things, about getting people to support this letter, asking them to co-sponsor Audit the Fed. And it really has become a really successful bridge issue, something that establishment folks started getting on board with, and it really started to snowball into something really great and positive. In the end, we have about 50% of the state committee. Well, we had about 70% of the state committee sign this letter, and then I started going to our state Republican legislators to sign this letter, and we got about 30 state Republican legislators to sign it. So I sent this to Senator Snowe and to Senator Collins last week. Today, Senator Collins, I got a call from one of Senator Collins' staff members saying that Senator Collins is going to be co-sponsoring Audit the Fed, and that went public today. It's all over the internet. I'm hoping we'll get a similar response from Senator Snowe. But that's something that is kind of a real change, real development. Now that we have power, we have influence in the Republican Party, we can put pressure on people in the party, on senators, on the national level and the state level. We can put pressure on them to vote the right way. Even if they would not normally do that, even if it's not their core beliefs. Now I don't know Senator Collins' heart. I don't know. I know I'm thankful for her doing this, and I think that's a big victory and a big example of what we can do within the Republican Party to start to shape people.
That's what I've been trying to tell people since coming back from Tampa is that's why I wanted to have people from different states on, because look at what we can do if we just take over this, not take over, okay, but I'm not trying to use that word, restore the state party back to our, the principles that we're supposed to have, and so then we can do stuff with the senators, and these people will be held, they'll feel the pressure, so to speak, and have to do it whether they really believe in doing it or not. At least they are doing it, and then it'll, we'll change the course of our nation slowly, and each state at a time. And we had a meeting with people from our district just to recap from Tampa and everything, and they were like, what are we going to do now, and it's not going to get us anywhere. And I said, let's start with our state committee. And they're going, is that even going to work? And they're already giving up hope just because we don't have it yet. But I mean, it can be done. You guys did it.
Well, and that's what we really have to do. I mean, I certainly, the folks out there who want to go the third-party route and want to, I certainly understand that. I've got a lot of people who say, well, the RNC should have showed you that you can't change the party from within. Well, I'm like, well, that's not how I interpret it. The reason that we got mistreated at the RNC was because we were so successful that they were very afraid of us. They were afraid of us having a voice there, and they were behaving like a cornered animal, like cornered animals, because that's what they were. We backed them in a corner, and they were behaving erratically. And in the end, through working through that, not only did we have the support of the Ron Paul people there, but on that rules vote, we got the support of mainstream Republicans, Tea Party Republicans, Rush Limbaugh Republicans. That's the impact that we can have when we kind of work within the party. Now, that doesn't mean that we be nice or be just toe the Republican Party line. I have no interest in doing that. But it means that we work at taking over this already developed system. I think when people say to me, "Oh, you can't just work within the system and change people's minds," it's like, well, we're not trying to change the minds of leadership. That's very hard. Now, if a leader or two does change their mind and does start doing the right thing, then yeah, I think I would be happy to welcome them on board. But the goal is not to change the minds of leadership. The goal is to change the leadership. The goal is to put liberty people in leadership, not to take the neocons that are in power and ask them to do the right thing. No, it's to get our numbers in there so that we have the numbers to replace those people who are putting forward really bad policies and really bad legislation. So I think that might be part of the misunderstanding that's out there.
Yeah, that's what people say. Well, the RNC is just going to do this test again in 4 more years. And I say, well, if we become the RNC, then they won't be able to do that because we'll be the ones running the RNC.
Yeah, that's completely true. Yeah, the RNC will do this to you. Not if we are the RNC, unless we're really kind of self-destructive, which sometimes we are. But one of the things we did in Maine was, we got the National Committee man, we got the National Committee woman. We have really strong champions of liberty on the RNC, and there's going to be a vote for the state party chair coming up in December, and that's also a member of the RNC, and that's also a very key role. And I think we're going to get someone in that position who's going to be significantly better than who we have there now. But I can't talk too much about that yet because there's things coming up in the near future. But I really hope that going forward, that becomes one of the new goals for the movement, is when these RNC positions come up for election, or how different states do it different ways. We elect our RNC people at our state convention, but that's not how every state does it. I really hope that in our different states we look at, and we, just like we did it with the conventions and the caucuses, we look at, okay, what are the rules of our state? How do we operate within those rules to get what we want? And we really need to start getting some of these RNC positions. That's how we're going to have an impact on the national party going forward. We need to get those RNC positions. And we've already got some of them, but we need a lot more. And I think that's kind of the next threat.
A lot more. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
We need to start to overcome.
Yeah, but it's what, 3 or 4 from each state, isn't it?
I think it's 3 from each
for the
state.
RNC.
I believe it's 3 from each state: the National Committee man, National Committee woman, and the party chair. So, and it's not based on population or anything. Every state gets 3. That's my understanding. Even like the
that's what I thought.
Even like Puerto Rico and folks too.
Yeah, that's why there's like 168 members or something like that. Right.
Yeah. And even just having a couple people in there, the more involved I get in politics, the more I realize how politics is just populated with a lot of sheep. A lot of people who don't really have agendas, who are just kind of doing what they're told. And even just having a couple people there with a really solid voice and who are there and making friends and convincing people, bringing people over. You're never gonna change the minds of the the hardcore neocons out there who have the agenda and are pushing the agenda. but you can get some of the sheep out there to start to follow a different shepherd, and that's something we can really do, and hopefully they become their own shepherds and they wake up to the message and they know what they're not just following people, they're following principles. But I think that even having voices in there where we didn't have voices before, you can start to make those changes.
Definitely, because they'll hear arguments from a side that they hadn't ever thought about it before.
Yeah.
And so they're going to have to consider something.
I think we keep cutting each other off, but I don't know. What else? I guess what else do you want to talk about? I'm happy to talk about what happened in Tampa, or.
Yeah. Well, before
a lot of people. Yeah. Wait. Go ahead.
Are you gonna ask about Tampa?
No.
Okay. Go ahead.
A lot of people are curious what happened after you guys won your delegates in Maine. What went wrong?
Went wrong.
Went wrong. In the establishment that tried to boot you guys out.
A number of things happened. Well, after we won the delegates, we proceeded forward. We had our own caucuses among the elected delegates to elect people to be delegation chair, elect people to the different committees at the RNC, like the Rules Committee, the Platform Committee, Credentials, and Permanent Organization. Now, one of the things that kind of came up that was I'll admit it was an oversight on my part. In the rules, there are, you elect, from the delegation, you elect 4 female members to the 4 different committees and 4 male members to the 4 different committees. Now, I hadn't read ahead in the rules. I hadn't read ahead to the RNC rules and saw that was the case. So we actually, among our delegation, we had 3 female Ron Paul supporters who were delegates. We had other females who were alternates, but we only had 3 who were delegates. And we had a 4th woman, which was our national committee woman, Jan Staples. So in terms of electing people to these positions, it was a foregone conclusion. There's going to have to be 3, our 3 women, Ashley Ryan, Erin Daly, and Linda Bean, and then Jan Staples would have to be on one of the 4 committees. So that was kind of, ideally we wanted to have Ron Paul people in all those positions, but that was how it was. Well, we knew that the most important positions were the Rules Committee and the Credentials Committee. Now, Jan Staples, our National Committee woman, had served on the Rules Committee on the RNC, and she was very insistent that she be on the Rules Committee. We felt that the Rules Committee was going to be very important, and so we chose to elect Ashley Ryan, our new National Committee woman, to that position. And Jan was very upset about that. And there was talk that with some of the accusations about our convention that if the RNC wanted Jan Staples on the Rules Committee, we should just give that to them so that they are not incentivized to challenge our delegation. And we were thinking, look, if Jan Staples on the Rules Committee, if that's what they cite to challenge our delegation, that's not going to be the hair that breaks the camel's back. If they're going to challenge our delegation, they're going to challenge it anyway. Oh, there's a phone going off. So anyway, so we ended up electing people to the three committees we thought were very important to get people on: Platform, Rules, and Credentials. We elected Ron Paul people to that. We were going to elect this is getting into kind of esoterics, I'm sorry, I don't want to bore people. But we were sought to elect Jan Staples to serve on the Permanent Organization Committee. She said she couldn't do that because of a personal conflict with the scheduling of that, and so we ended up, as the rules said we could, we ended up electing an alternate to fill that position. She was very upset about that. She was very upset that she didn't get on the Rules Committee that she wanted to, and she was upset that she didn't get the committee she wanted. then things kind of went quiet for a while. We thought we were in the clear. We kind of really felt like they were going to be foolish to challenge the delegation. But then on the last filing day possible, we got the challenge, and first we weren't quite sure what to make of it. Now, our party chairman, Charlie Webster, approached me and some others. The Romney campaign was claiming, so the challenge was filed by Jan Staples, our national committee woman, and Peter Chinquette, who was the state chairman for the Mitt Romney campaign. The Mitt Romney campaign claimed that they had nothing. I'm sorry, what?
Did you guys, when did you expect or anticipate them to file a challenge against you guys?
We didn't expect them to. We kind of thought we were in the clear because Maine was a very clear case of the Ron Paul people winning, and everyone who was at that convention knew that we had the numbers and that the Romney people didn't. They didn't really have a grassroots strategy. They didn't really have. Their strategy was send lawyers. That's really all it was. All the campaign staff they had at our state convention were lawyers. They weren't people who'd worked with the Romney supporters. The Romney supporters didn't know who they were. They weren't following their directions because they didn't know who these people were. Meanwhile, here with the Ron Paul campaign, we'd been on the ground for nearly a year working with the grassroots. The Romney campaign came in maybe 2 weeks ahead of time and expected to tie the whole state up. And in fact, when they didn't tie the state up, they were really pissed at the state GOP for not delivering it to them. But it was really their own fault. They didn't put in any time or effort into Maine. But that was that. With the challenge. So the party chairman approached me at one point and told us that the Romney campaign or staff within the Romney campaign said that they would drop the challenge if we agreed that our delegates would vote for Mitt Romney if Ron Paul wasn't on the ballot, if we would have our delegation chair be kind of his spokesmanship position be replaced by either the governor or our party chairman, and then they also wanted us to promise not to say anything bad about Mitt Romney at the convention, which at that point we weren't planning to say anything bad about Mitt Romney. We just wanted to go and support Ron Paul. And so that third one we were like, all right, well, that one's not a problem. We're not going there to be disruptive. We're not going there to be disrespectful. We're just going there to support Ron Paul. And, we're certainly not going to say anything positive about Barack Obama or anything. So, but it was, we kind of felt like we were being blackmailed a little bit. So we kind of talked about it as a delegation. This is the deal that they're offering us. Do we want to, what do we think of this? And we decided unanimously to not accept that deal, in fact, to go public about the deal. And we did. And that kind of blew up in their faces a little bit. I don't think they were expecting us to do that. And let's see, what else? And meanwhile, during all of this, remember that the Mitt Romney campaign claimed that they were not involved in the challenge at all, which you talk to anyone, that's utter BS. In fact, I remember we all got the notice of the challenge in the mail. Every single delegate and alternate got a notice of the challenge in the mail. And if you look at the postage, where the postage was stamped, it came from in Massachusetts, in the same zip code where Mitt Romney's campaign headquarters was. So, them saying that they weren't involved in the challenge, I think, is a little laughable. But anyway, so we decided that we were not going to take any deals from the Mitt Romney campaign. They came back to us on several occasions with deals. At one point, they came to us with a deal where they said, all right, you give us 7 delegates, or we're going to go forward and you're going to get no delegates. So either you give us 7 delegates or you lose all 20 of your delegates. And we that was kind of a scary moment for us because it was really it was a moment where we realized that we could lose everything that we'd worked for. But we talked as a delegation and we decided that, that we weren't going to accept any deals, that they better seat all of us or none of us. If they wanted to steal it from us, they had to steal it from us. We were not going to be willing victims to it. So, let's, yeah. Anyway, I was going to say something, but I don't want to. Anyway, one thing. Now, one thing I do want to say about the campaign's involvement in all this, because I don't know how the campaign worked in other states. I was in Maine the whole time. The Ron Paul campaign and the national campaign was very supportive of the Maine delegation all the way through the whole process. When these deals were being offered, the campaign told us, this deal has been offered. This is your guys' decision. This is your state, and we're going to support what you do. If you want to take this deal and lose 7 delegates but keep your 14, then take that and we'll support that. Or if you want to stay and fight it all the way through to the bitter end, we'll support you in that. And they did. When we decided that we did not want to take any deals from the RNC or the Mitt Romney campaign, the Ron Paul campaign supported us. Not only did they support us, it's easy to say, oh, I support you. They put the money in to provide the lawyers that gave us the legal defense that we took to the RNC Committee on Contests, that we took to the Credentials Committee, and we had their full support in all of those challenges. Now, what ended up happening was the RNC Committee on Contests, which is a 7-person committee made up of members of the RNC. They heard all the contests in all the different states. And they ruled, on their first hearing, they ruled against the Ron Paul delegates in all cases, except in Maine, because they didn't rule either way. Essentially, the challenge that was filed by Jan Staples and Peter Chinquette, they did not present enough evidence to meet the burden of proof that they required. They did not prove that a single illegal vote was cast. They did not prove that, essentially, they didn't prove anything. And so rather than dismissing the case and seating the Maine delegates, what they did was they said, you know what, we're going to give Peter Chinquette and Jan Staples a second opportunity to prove their case, to go back and get new evidence, and we'll try it all over again. I've heard that called double jeopardy. In a court of law, I might call it double jeopardy too. But that was what happened. And on the second hearing, there wasn't much evidence, but they had a predetermined outcome, and they wanted to get to that predetermined outcome because the Mitt Romney campaign wanted it. And you have the RNC deciding it, and the RNC at this point in a presidential campaign is essentially synonymous with the campaign of the presumptive nominee. So the Mitt Romney campaign was essentially the judge, the jury, and the executioner. So thankfully, at this point, we had several things on our side, including the fact that our governor, Paul LePage, had come out in support of our delegation, saying that if the delegation was not seated, he would not go to Tampa. And Paul LePage, I consider Paul LePage a strong ally even before this, but he was going to support the presumptive nominee, Mitt Romney. So the fact that he was going there and saying that what the Mitt Romney campaign and the RNC is doing is wrong, and that he was going to boycott the convention, that was all the more powerful. And I think it was in large part because of that, the RNC felt like they couldn't strip us of all of our delegates. They somehow felt like stripping us of half of our delegates and giving it to the Mitt Romney people, that was somehow more appropriate. And so they took 10 of our delegates away. They kicked out 10 delegates, kept 10 of the Ron Paul delegates, and then replaced those delegates with Mitt Romney supporters. Now, at that point, one of the things to know is that the RNC Committee on Contests, who made this decision, it's a 7-person panel made up of members of states like Arkansas and California and Kentucky. Not a single person on this panel was from Maine. And they chose which 10 delegates were going to get to keep their positions, which 10 delegates were going to get to lose their positions, and which 10 people were going to replace those 10 that lost their positions. So you had a 7-person panel from other states choosing who was going to represent our state, which I find atrocious. That Maine should be able to select its own representation. Instead, our representation was chosen by people from other states, which is absolutely ridiculous, especially considering the fact that we argued 2 positions. First, we argued that, first of all, our delegates should remain as stands. But then we also argued that according to the RNC's own rules, if there are vacancies in a delegation and you're within 10 days of the convention, which we were at that point, then it is the responsibility of the remaining delegates, of which we had 5. It is the responsibility of the remaining delegates to elect people to fill those positions. And 3 of those remaining delegates would have just elected all the people who are elected at the state convention. That's Governor LePage, his wife, and our national committee man, Rick Bennett. They would have been a majority. They would have just said, all right, you're going to disqualify Maine's delegates. Okay, well, all those people you just disqualified, we're re-electing them to fill those positions again. And they knew that that was going to happen, and so they ignored their own rules. And they said, no, well, we're ignoring that rule. We're going to just appoint the people to represent Maine. And so we argued that in front of the Committee on Contests. We argued that in front of the Credentials Committee. And, but you're essentially arguing for the Mitt Romney campaign to rule against itself. And that's not going to happen. So we lost those appeals. And that was pretty disheartening. But at the convention, we decided that, we wanted to be able to go home with our heads held high, being able to say that we did everything in our power to do everything we could to get our delegation sat. So we decided to work to make a motion on the floor of the national convention to seat the Maine delegation as it was elected. Now, we understood this was a Hail Mary pass. It had about a snowball's chance of hell in passing. But we wanted to be able to say that we tried everything. So we just started talking to the other Ron Paul delegates who were there, and folks like the Oklahoma delegation, but then also Texas and Iowa and Nevada and Virginia, all these other states where there were strong Ron Paul contingent, and we were getting a lot of traction. But the really surprising thing was we were starting to get a lot of traction from states where there weren't really any Ron Paul people, who when they heard exactly what happened to the Maine delegation, we were getting a lot of sympathy. So there was a flyer that was created that highlighted what happened to the Maine delegation on one side, and on the other side we had what was going on with the rules challenges, saying, look, here's what happened to Maine, and here's what's happening in rules, and if these rules pass, they're going to be able to do to every state going forward what they did to Maine. So we have to support the Maine delegation, get them sat. We have to vote against the rules changes, and some supporters made up these flyers and stuck them under the door of every single hotel room where delegates were staying, and I don't know who those people were. I hear they want to remain anonymous, but anyway, that was very and it created a very interesting situation where states that had no idea what was going on were suddenly asking questions about what was going on. I heard in one state where I think it was Missouri, the party chair took aside all the delegates and had to explain to them why they shouldn't vote to support the Maine delegation. It put things in a real awkward position for the RNC and for the convention. But then more than that, the rules changes were really taking off. This backlash against the rules changes. I mean, it wasn't just the Ron Paul supporters. You had Rush Limbaugh speaking out against the rules changes. Michelle Malcolm, Freedom Works. It was really going viral, and it really kind of tying the two of those things together was very successful. So when it came time for the vote on the convention floor to support the Maine delegation, what we once thought was going to be an absolute Hail Mary pass, snowball's chance in hell of getting anywhere, we started to think maybe this has a chance. And when it came time to adopt the Credentials Committee report, Brent Tweed, our delegation chair, was going to make the motion from the floor to have it amended to seat the Maine delegation. Every delegation on the floor has a phone. You can pick up the phone, and you can ask to have your mic turned on so you can make a motion. Brent picked up the phone and asked to have the mic turned on so he could make a motion, and they refused to turn his mic on. So he got up anyway. He went to the microphone that was turned off. He called a point of order. He read the motion aloud. They said, if there's no objection, we're going to pass the Credentials Committee report, as it stands, and half the room objected. And then, in addition to that, when they ignored those objections, they ignored Brent Tweed, they ignored all of this, then they went on to do just a straight up or down vote on the Credentials Committee report. Ayes and nays, and I was seated in the bleachers with all the guests because I was kicked off as a delegate. And the nays were pretty darn loud. The ayes were pretty loud too, but it was really close, and it was really hard to know if the nays or the ayes had it on the credentials report. And if this was a fair convention, you would have had a standing vote after that. You would have had, all right, since it's not clear, you have, all right, all those for passing the credentials report stand, all those against passing the credentials report stand, and then you have a visual kind of look at what was close. And then if that was still too close, then you would have a roll call by state to get the actual numbers. We didn't do any of that. They just steamrolled along past it. And that was a really emotional moment. We kind of were starting to, it was kind of the last threshold of we're going to really try. And when they just steamrolled past that and they wouldn't let us be sat, that's when a lot of us up in the guest bleachers left, the delegates who were kicked out. So we left. And then, but after that, directly after that, there was still the rules fight. And the rules fight, same thing happened. They steamrolled us again. Only here, the nays were even louder, and it was pretty clear to people on the floor that the nays were louder than the yeas for passing the rules. And they steamrolled past that too. And that's when a lot of us just was like, this isn't a real convention. It's I saw a really funny meme of whose line is it anyway? This is the Republican National Convention where the votes don't count and the people don't matter or something like that. But that's when we realized this wasn't a real convention. They were just going to steamroll us, even if we had the votes. So that's when we walked out and started talking to the media.
You kept breaking up on us, so we couldn't hear what you said.
Oh, breaking up. I'm sorry. Yeah. Anyway, the nays were louder than the yeas on the rules, and the nays were pretty darn close on the credentials report, and we all left after that. We were very upset. I was very upset. And I think for those who watched the YouTube videos, you could tell that we were pretty upset. I know I was. I know there were a lot of tears going around. Yeah, it really felt like, I don't want to. I hate to compare it to something so serious and severe, but it really felt like being raped. That here we did all this work, and it was just thrown away, and we had no control, no power, and the powers that be were just gonna steamroll over us. But it was so encouraging, the support we had from states like Oklahoma and Texas and Iowa and Nevada and Minnesota and so on. And that was, if nothing else, that was really the most encouraging thing I took away from that was how many of us there were and how powerful we were.
Yeah, definitely. That is what kind of got us through, I think, the rest of the week. Cause I know I was in tears for hours that Tuesday afternoon after everything went down, and as we were there, and I just couldn't believe it. I was like, we worked really hard for this, and we did all this work. You guys did work. We spent a whole week there ahead of time at the Committee on Contests and the Credentials Committee. We submitted paperwork for nominations, and we worked on these rules that we didn't want changed, and all these different things. And then it was as if nothing. It didn't matter that we did any of that because they already had it planned out. And to see it all, it was really.
They could have cared less that all these people spent so much, blood, sweat, and tears just to get there, and then they just booted them out like nothing. Just ignored their microphones and everything. So it was pretty insane to watch.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's just, getting there and realizing that the convention was a cocktail party. Here I was thinking that a convention was supposed to be a place where you go and you do the business of the party and you decide what the direction of the party is going to be. You vote on the rules, you vote on the platform, you do all these things, and you just realize that it's just a party, and the important decisions are. You're not there as a delegate to participate in the important decisions. You're there to kind of be entertained and have the bread and circus, and it really felt like we were being treated like children. Not just the Ron Paul people, but all the delegates there. I really think that every single delegate there should have been insulted by the way that they were treated and talked down to. That they were told that their votes don't matter. That you let the grown-ups make the real decisions. And that's kind of what a lot of the establishment have been saying to the grassroots for a long time is, it's so cute, you want to get involved in politics and have a say in these things, but, we've been here longer, we know how things work, let the grown-ups make the decisions. You'll be a grown-up someday. It really was very, very infuriating to me.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's what I talked to people as I was in tears, and after everything went down on Tuesday, the people who were there, women in this bathroom was way up high on the 6th level or wherever it was, and they were like shocked. They looked at me like they felt sorry for me because I happened to have a Ron Paul pin on. They're like, "Oh, we're sorry you just lost," and I'm like, "Don't be sorry for me. Look at what you guys just did. Didn't you realize how horrible that was?" And they were like,
they were so convinced. The RNC didn't make anything to make themselves look better. I was like, okay, I guess you guys are just here for the party.
Well, it was really funny when we walked out, and when I think I'm talking about the second walkout when everyone walked out, not just Maine, but Texas and all these other states walked out with us the second day. The security was looking at us like, what do we do? Because they're just leaving. It's like, we're supposed to be prepared against people trying to get in here. But people who are being loud and leaving, it's like we don't know what to do. And then as we were leaving, just all the security in Tampa just being so helpful and so nice to us and being like, "Oh, you guys are the good protesters." It was really kind of, it was really, I don't know, it was weird.
Yeah, it was weird. To see all their faces, I don't think they're expecting a bunch of people to come out of the convention marching, Normally those kind of people try to go in.
Right. Yeah. It's funny, they had all these barricades up to stop people from getting in, and then as we were leaving, we were like, where are all the protesters? I don't know, I saw like little pockets of people, but I guess I've heard about, huge protests at other past conventions. I didn't see them here. The protests were happening on the inside.
Yeah, I never saw any protesters either.
On Tuesday there was a small handful, but there were some, but not many.
Well, we have only 1 minute left.
Okay.
I feel like we could go on for a little bit longer since there's so much that we didn't even cover. But
I talk a lot, so sorry.
Hey, it's good.
Very interesting. It's good.
Yeah, I'll just have to have you on again. what would you want to just sum up one message to give to everyone, to leave with everyone?
All of these things that we've done, that's how we've gotten to where we are now. Now we need to look forward. This presidential election is a wash. Whatever the outcome, I'm not going to be pleased with it. But what we need to do is we need to look at our local candidates. We need to get involved on the local and the state level. That's what we're doing here in Maine. That's why I'm working now with an organization called Defense of Liberty PAC. I'm the chair of this organization. We're looking to get Liberty candidates elected at the state and the local level. We're having a lot of success. There are a lot of great candidates here in Maine. And we already have a wonderful governor who we can work with. So get involved at the state and the local level. And if you want to help us out here in Maine, go to defenseoflibertypac.com. You can check out what's going on there. You can sign up and become a member. You can donate some money to help out. Maine is really a wonderful microcosm. You can do a lot with a little bit of money here. And we'd love to make Maine an example of what a liberty state can be. And we got New Hampshire right next door. We got a little healthy competition going on with them. I'd like to leapfrog them and become more liberty than New Hampshire. So.
Okay. Thank you, Eric, for being on with us. And
yeah, thank you. I learned a lot about Maine that I hadn't really known before. How it all went.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, let's keep talking. We need to continue the conversation across states.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And guys, we'll be back on next week at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I'm hoping to have someone from Virginia or a couple people from Virginia on. If I can just get a hold of them, I'll have a couple people on.
We're going to, just a news sleeper, we're going to Music City Liberty Fest on November 3rd to live stream. So
in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yes.
We'll be there. And as always, we like to end our show with Gotta Believe the Bible is Saved from Hell. So check out our website, atruechurch.info. We'll see y'all next week. And thanks again to Eric.
Bye, Eric.
Thank you so much. Take care.